The betrayal didn't arrive with a dramatic confrontation or a tearful confession. It seeped in through the sterile glow of a computer screen in the dead of night, silent and venomous. Alara Vance, a name synonymous with architectural innovation in the city's cutthroat landscape, sat bathed in the blue light, the silence of the Vance and Croft architects' 40th floor office a stark contrast to the roaring in her ears. For weeks, a quiet unease had gnawed at her. Discrepancies in the quarterly reports, invoices that seemed to float without anchor, and a subtle, almost imperceptible distance from her husband and business partner, Julian Croft. She had dismissed it as the usual stress of managing a premier firm, the ebb and flow of a marriage that was also a business partnership. But tonight, a corrupted file for the Phoenix Tower, her passion project, her magnum opus, had led her down a rabbit hole of server archives. And there it was. An email folder, carelessly left unsensed from the cloud, on Julian's local machine. The folder's name was Contingency. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she clicked it open. It wasn't just an affair with a junior architect, a vapid but ambitious young woman named Chloe. That was a simple, almost cliché, wound. This was a meticulous, calculated vivisection of their shared life. For over a year, Julian had been siphoning funds, creating shell accounts, and padding expenses to finance a life Alara knew nothing about, a life with Chloe. But the true poison was in the subfolder titled Phoenix Pitch. He was planning to steal her design, the culmination of a decade of her work, and present it as his own to a rival developer. He had stripped her name from the blueprints, replacing Vance with Croft in every digital file. He was erasing her. The glass and steel of the office, usually a source of pride, felt like a cage. The panoramic view of the city skyline, a glittering tapestry she had helped weave, now seemed to mock her. Every beam, every window of their shared penthouse, every piece of their curated life, was a lie. The man she loved, the partner she trusted implicitly, was not just unfaithful, he was a thief, methodically dismantling her legacy from the inside out. The shock was a physical blow, leaving her breathless. Then came the anger, a white-hot rage that threatened to consume her. The city became a blur of painful memories. Alara fled to the one place Julian had never cared for, her family's old mountain cabin in the Sierras. It was a world away from the polished concrete and sharp angles of her life. Here, the architecture was raw and natural, towering pines, jagged granite peaks, and a sky so vast it made her own problems feel, for a moment, infinitesimally small. For 2 weeks, she let the grief wash over her. She hiked until her lungs burned, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from the emotional torment. She sat by the crackling fire in the evenings, the flames dancing like the furious thoughts in her mind. She sketched, not buildings, but the gnarled bark of ancient trees and the rugged faces of the mountains. Her inner monologue was a relentless storm of hows and whys. How could she have been so blind? Why had he done it? The betrayal was a complex poison, one part heartbreak, one part professional sabotage. One crisp morning, standing on a ridge overlooking a vast, silent valley, a shift occurred. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and with it came a cold, hard clarity. Grief was a passive state. Anger was a fire that could either consume her or forge her into something stronger. She would not be erased. She would not be a victim in her own life story. Julian had started a war, but she would be the one to finish it, not with scorched earth tactics, but with the precision of a master architect. She would build her way out of the ruins. Returning to the city, Alara was a changed woman. The fragile, wounded spouse was gone, replaced by a determined strategist. Her first call was not to a divorce lawyer, but to Isabel Izichin, a college friend who had become one of the city's most feared forensic accountants. They met in a discreet corner of a quiet hotel bar, the city lights twinkling outside. "I need you to follow the money, Izzy," Alara said, her voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil of the past weeks. Every cent. I want a complete, undeniable map of his deceit. Izzy, with her sharp eyes and even sharper mind, nodded slowly. He has no idea what's coming, does he? He thinks I'm broken, Alara replied, a flicker of steel in her eyes. He's about to find out I'm just getting started. The next few months were a masterclass in strategic patience. While Julian, oblivious, continued his charade, Alara and Izzy worked in the shadows. Izzy's team was a whirlwind of quiet efficiency, unearthing a web of shell corporations, falsified invoices, and secret credit lines. The scale of the embezzlement was staggering, far worse than Alara had imagined. Simultaneously, Alara retained Marcus Thorne, a lawyer whose reputation for meticulous preparation and calm, lethal courtroom presence was legendary. In the sterile, book-lined conference room of his firm, they plotted their course. We have two fronts, Marcus explained, his steepled fingers pointing towards a whiteboard. The divorce and the dissolution of the firm. The evidence Izzy is gathering will be the sledgehammer in both. We don't just want a settlement, we want justice. We will prove financial malfeasance and intellectual property theft. Alara also brought in Leo Martinez, a bright, loyal junior architect at the firm who had always looked up to her. In a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop far from their office, she laid out a sanitized version of the situation. Julian's leadership is compromising the firm. I am planning to start my own. When the time comes, I'd like you to come with me. Leo's response was immediate. Alara, I came to Vance and Croft to work with you. Wherever you go, I'm in. His loyalty was a balm on her wounded spirit. The biggest gamble came when Alara learned through her network that Julian and Chloe were preparing to pitch a watered-down version of the Phoenix Tower to a major developer. They had the basic structure, but they lacked the soul of the project, the innovative sustainable energy systems and the unique structural engineering solutions that only Alara had fully developed. Instead of trying to block their meeting, Alara made a bolder move. She secured a meeting with Sophia Rossi, a titan of the real estate world, a developer known for her visionary projects and her no-nonsense attitude. Alara walked into Sophia's stunning office, a minimalist masterpiece overlooking the bay, not as a victim, but as an equal. She didn't mention Julian's betrayal. Instead, she laid out her undiluted, brilliant vision for the Phoenix Tower. She presented new, breathtaking renderings, detailed financial projections, and a passionate explanation of the design's groundbreaking environmental and aesthetic principles. Sophia, a woman who could spot talent and trouble a mile away, listened intently. This is brilliant, Alara. Far more impressive than the version I've heard whispers about. Why are you leaving your own firm to do this? Alara met her gaze. I'm not leaving it. I'm liberating my work from a partnership that has become creatively and ethically compromised. I am building something new, and the Phoenix Tower will be its foundation. Sophia smiled, a rare and powerful sight. I don't back projects, I back people. And I have a feeling you're the best investment I could make this year. Let's build it. The confrontation happened not in a home filled with shattered memories, but in the neutral territory of the Vance and Croft boardroom. Julian walked in, arrogant and smiling, expecting a routine quarterly review. He found Alara, flanked by Marcus Thorne and a junior counsel, a mountain of binders on the table before them. What's all this? Julian asked, his smile faltering. This, Alara said, her voice resonating with cold power, is the end of the charade. Marcus Thorne calmly began to speak, his tone dispassionate as he detailed every fraudulent transaction, every shell company, every stolen dollar. Izzy had created a perfect, irrefutable timeline of his crimes. When Marcus paused, Alara slid a document across the polished table. It was a side-by-side comparison of her original Phoenix Tower blueprints and the ones he had prepared for his pitch. The color drained from Julian's face. He looked at Alara, seeing for the first time the woman who stood before him now, not his wife, but a formidable adversary. The legal battle was swift and brutal. Faced with incontrovertible evidence of embezzlement and intellectual property theft, Julian had no choice but to capitulate. To avoid criminal charges, he agreed to a complete buyout of his shares in the firm for a symbolic $1, the transfer of the Phoenix Tower intellectual property solely to Alara, and a divorce settlement that left him with a fraction of what he had tried to steal. The firm Vance and Croft was dissolved. Chloe was fired, her budding career tarnished by the scandal. Months later, Vance Architecture was born. Alara's new office was an urban loft, a space filled with light, collaboration, and a palpable sense of excitement. Leo was now her senior project manager, and her team was a hand-picked group of the best and brightest who had been drawn to her renewed vision. The resolution culminated on a bright, windy day at a sprawling construction site. Alara, Sophia Rossi by her side, stood before a crowd of city officials and journalists. Behind them, a gleaming silver shovel was poised to break ground for the Phoenix Tower. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes finding her loyal team. She spoke of resilience, of building not just with steel and glass, but with integrity. She spoke of new beginnings. There was no bitterness in her voice, only the quiet strength of someone who had walked through fire and emerged not scorched, but forged. Julian, stripped of his reputation and fortune, was a ghost in the city he once dominated. Chloe had disappeared. Theirs was a cautionary tale whispered in the corridors of power. That evening, Alara stood on the balcony of her new penthouse, a space she had designed for herself. It was smaller than the one she had shared with Julian, but it was entirely her own. The city skyline glittered before her, and in the distance, the cranes for the Phoenix Tower reached for the sky. She opened her sketchbook, the pencil feeling light and familiar in her hand. She wasn't just designing buildings anymore, she was designing her life. She had lost a husband and a business, but she had found something far more valuable, herself. And in that discovery, she found a profound and lasting peace, a connection not to a single person, but to the future she was now free to build.